Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Swiswiki. Coming up, Samoa Parliament delays the second motion against the Prime Minister. Also, Pacific Language Week dates are now released. And
any vessel on the high sea must have a flag, otherwise they're considered to be a pirate and they are at risk from capture.
Solomon Islands looks to set up a ship registry. Samoa's parliament has adjourned until tomorrow due to disagreements over the contents of a new motion of no confidence in Prime Minister Fiame Mataafa. Yes, you heard that right, a new motion of no confidence. The mover of this week's motion, La'auli Lewatea Schmidt, leader of the Fast Party, is at loggerheads with the opposition leader Tuilaipa Sailele Malele Ngaoi. Joining me is our reporter Grace Vivaai, who's been following the story. Talofa lava, Grace, what's the latest from today's sitting and what happened?
Talofa lava, Susana, thank you. Samoa's Prime Minister Fiame Mataafa faced another leadership challenge this week, and Parliament's sitting ended early yesterday due to this motion submitted by Lauli, who leads the Fast faction. And today in Parliament, Samoa's Parliament was then adjourned temporarily amid, disagreements over the contents of a new motion of no confidence against Prime Minister Fiame Mataafa. Also last week, Fiame defeated a similar motion from 34 to 15, and she contends there is no justification for moving another vote of no confidence a week later on the same grounds. Meanwhile, the other mover of this week's motion is La'auli Lewatea Schmidt, who is now at loggerheads with opposition leader Tuilaipa Sailele Malele Ngaoi. Now, Tuilaipa had said he would endorse today's motion, but some amendments were made, overnight last night, that he disagreed with. Because of the deadlock, Speaker Papali'i Li'o Ta'eo Masipa'u suspended parliamentary proceedings today for 2 hours to try and resolve some of these issues.
So what happens next?
So Samoa's Speaker of the House, Papali'i Li'o Ta'eo Masipa'u, said parliamentary proceedings and procedures need to be adhered to. He also asked La'auli Lewatea Schmidt and the opposition leader Tuilaipa Sailele Malele Ngaoi to clarify their motion in writing. He's noted that HRPP's motion significantly differs from La'auli's, allowing the progress for Parliament's decision, and the revised motion is due by tomorrow at 12 p.m.
And Grace, is there anything else?
Yes, so RNZ Pacific is still trying to determine what exactly those amendments were, and I can confirm that I spoke to a spokesperson from the Legislative Office, and that parliamentary sitting is due to convene back on Thursday at the normal time, 9:30.
New Zealand's Ministry for Pacific Peoples have released the dates for the Pacific Language Week series, and for the first time, Bislama, the national language of Vanuatu, will be included. With the addition of Bislama, this brings the total number of Pacific Language Weeks to 12. I spoke with the Minister for Pacific Peoples, Dr. Shane Reti, and began by asking him about the work that was done to include more Melanesian languages.
So we had a very successful Pacific Language Week last year, and a lot of the measures that we use to approximate success, the reach across various social media, etc., was very, very successful. And we and I believe, the ministry and myself, that the Pacific Language Weeks are very important. And what we know is that when we have international VIPs, politicians and other dignitaries, invariably somewhere in the conversation, the Pacific Language Week comes up, and they also value us applying ourselves and giving resource and time to this particular activity. So this year we've added a 12th. There is a criteria for Pacific Language Weeks, and we've added a 12th, as you say, Bislama, from Vanuatu, and we know they're very excited for that to be included as part of our series, beginning the second week in May with the Rotuma, the Rotuman Island language. So we're very excited to lead that out, and we have high expectations that it will be as well received this year as it was last year.
Are you engaging or learning any Pacific languages yourself, Minister?
Yes, every time a new Pacific Language Week starts, I receive instruction from the Ministry for Pacific Peoples around what some of the conversational greetings might be, but I get the opportunity to say a few words.
And what are your favorite Pacific phrases so far?
Or they would be very simple. I'd have to say, I do find myself almost in a large number of settings saying malo. It just rolls off the tongue. You know, I'm sure Talofa and a number of others would get me there too. But if you said to me, what is your frequency of Pacific words, I would have to say malo gets me through a large number of environments. And I certainly attempt all of the languages, but you've asked me which do I use the most, and that is actually what I use the most.
Malolele. So just turning our attention elsewhere, just for a moment, will you be attending this year's Polyfest? It's going to be a big celebration with the festival turning 50.
Yeah, 50 years. So imagine the biggest Polynesian cultural festival in the world, and celebrating 50 years. So it is my ambition to be there this year. I thoroughly enjoyed last year, and it is my ambition to be there again this year.
So when you say ambition, will you be there, Minister?
That's what I'm hoping. I've scheduled it, and unless there's any surprises, that's what I'm planning.
So what we've been hearing from the Polyfest organisers, they've said that although you promised a $5,000 funding increase this year, it wasn't enough. What's your response to that? Do you think that's fair criticism?
My response to that is this is one of the biggest grants that the Ministry for Pacific People gives, and at a 10% increase from last year, almost double CPI, double inflation, I would suggest that it is a significant contribution to an important festival. I understand that festivals will always need more, but if we just contemplate that for a moment, it's a 10% increase from last year, and as I understand it from the ministry, one of, if not the biggest grant we give it to festivals of that type. That is a good contribution from government.
So will you continue to support Polyfest in the future?
Look, we assess that year on year, that it's still the value that we look to make from the precious funding that we have with Ministry for Pacific People. And last year and this year, and in fact, for a number of consecutive years, that's exactly what we've done. So as long as it continues to deliver value, which it has been, then I would anticipate that the ministry will still look at providing support.
While I have you with me, there are growing calls for visa waiver access for Pacific countries. We've had Green MP Te Anau Tuiono backing this, and former National MP Anai Arthur Anai has even launched a petition for this. Is this something you want to get behind as well?
Look, this is substantively a discussion for the Minister for Immigration and Foreign Affairs. We have a long, enduring relationship with people in the Pacific, and are keen to continue that relationship into the future and indeed to grow it. But the particular issues around the visas are under the domain of the Minister for Immigration and the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Do you think it's worth discussing, though, with Winston Peters?
Look, that's a discussion for the petition organisers to have with the Minister.
Okay, so what are you hearing from the Pacifica communities that you serve there, and what are the issues that they want you to address and prioritise?
They want us to address the economy. They're hurting from the cost of living. Many New Zealanders are hurting from the cost of living, but certainly Pacific communities are as well. They're wanting us to address infrastructure, housing, for example. I'm very proud of the work that the Ministry for Pacific Peoples is doing around building Pacific-styled housing, Porirua, Auckland, Hamilton, across a number of areas in New Zealand, providing that multi-generational Pacifica-styled housing. So housing is very important as well. Health, of course. We know that ambulatory sensitive hospitalizations particularly apply to Pacific people, and this is partly why we launched last year the Healthy Homes Initiative for Pacific people. So that if we can improve the warmth, remove dampness in a home, what we know is that less people turn up at ER, there's decrease in beneficiary take-up, increase in employment. There's just a range of good measures. No one would be surprised by that. If you have a warm home that's healthy, of course, your general outlook on life and participation in life is better as well. What's unique here is that the Healthy Homes Initiative has genuinely been triggered by criteria around young people. The Ministry for Pacific Peoples has extended that criteria to older Pacific peoples as well. So we're leading out the next phase of what healthy homes looks like, and I'll be really excited to get that first 12-month review of that. Already hundreds, if not thousands, of interventions have been undertaken in Pacific people's homes.
And just before I let you go, how are things so far at the Ministry for Pacific Peoples? You know, given the funding cuts and not meeting one of their key targets, it was quite a tough year for staff. You know, how are things looking so far?
Oh, there is huge enthusiasm to improve the outlook for Pacific peoples here in New Zealand, and to foster and develop the long-standing relationship we have with the home countries. So there is excitement, there's enthusiasm, there is a real ambition to continue to fulfill the mission of the Ministry for Pacific Peoples. And again, if we imagine some of the funding that we do, we've talked about the Pacific Language Weeks, but some of the funding that we do, like, for example, to the Centre for Pacific Languages, is around helping save and preserve and grow, if you like, the unique Pacific languages here in New Zealand. So we do see ourselves as collaborating with the home countries and being shepherds for Pacific languages here in New Zealand.
You know, with this enthusiasm and ambition to connect with the home countries in the Pacific region, am I hearing more funding for this year for MPP?
Oh, look, I couldn't comment on what's a Budget 25 discussion that will be apparent on Budget Day. But what I do know is that we box above our weight, that we're really good with the current funds that we have at having an impact on the lives of Pacific peoples here in New Zealand, and how we can project that back to the home countries.
A political scientist in New Caledonia is surveying citizens of the French territory to find out what they would prefer the future status of the country to be. Anthony Tutugoro, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of New Caledonia, is taking part in an international research program called the Inclusive Peace Project, which also involves universities from England, Canada, and Japan. It aims to compare deeply divided societies which, through their histories of conflict, have adopted power sharing at an institutional level. Mr. Tutugoro told Koroi Hawkins, for years, New Caledonians have been presented with only two options, yes or no to independence, and one of the things his research is looking into is what else might be possible.
Let's go back to the referendum 2018. The question asked to the population of New Caledonia was, do you want New Caledonia to obtain full sovereignty and become independent? Okay, yes or no? But the gray area might be like, okay, you have a sovereign state, full sovereign state, that might be the position of the pro-independence movement, okay? And on the other side, on the extreme side, you have like kind of departmentalization, like getting back all the power to France, and France rule New Caledonia as a region or a French department, okay? So that's really, we go back to all the autonomy New Caledonia has gained for the last years, last decades, okay? But between that, you have like, you can have, after the full sovereign state, you can have a partnership, okay? Free association with French state, with other states, we never know. You also have the status quo, okay? Which is like, at the moment you have like share power between France and New Caledonia, but it's France who share its sovereignty with New Caledonia, okay? Because New Caledonia has not the sovereignty, okay? That's the difference. With the free association, you are a sovereign country and you decide to share with the other state, okay? So ex-colonial state, or another state. So the status quo might be an option. And we have new options coming on the table at the moment. We have federalism, which is an internal division of power, territorial division of power, which will give more power to the provinces, okay? Which will be...
North and South, mainly.
Yeah. Sorry?
Mainly North and South, is that
North, South, and the islands. Well, I guess that's what's appearing on the project. But it might be... It might be a coming back a little bit in the past, you know, coming like it might be like if New Caledonia gives back a bit of autonomy to France, because other competencies will be ruled by France. Okay, so that's all these kind of zones we can identify, and then after we ask, what will you prefer for your future? These are the different kinds of potential solutions, and we want to estimate with the population, like what position are you kindly you will kindly assume, or what you will refuse at all, or what you will be really agree to, So that's basically some, but it's one question, but we have many more questions.
Solomon Islands is looking at starting up its own ship registry, following other Pacific Island nations despite other registries in the region being controversial. Last week, Solomon Islands Minister for Infrastructure Development met with Tuvalu's Minister for Natural Resources Development to talk about the potential ship registry. Alexander Gillespie with the University of Waikato says Solomon Islands will be motivated by money.
Any vessel on the high sea must have a flag, otherwise they're considered to be a pirate and they are at risk from capture. So every country must have a flag, and the idea being, though, however, is that the flag state must have what's called a genuine link to the vessel. And so it's not just something which is a loose or tangential connection. They should have a real grip on that vessel to make sure that the standards that they apply to carried out. And so the standards that you're looking at are everything from safety standards through to vessel construction, through to fishing agreements, because effectively, if you go for that country's flag, that vessel is tied to the obligations that that country has accepted.
Why would a ship, let's say it's a New Zealand ship, why would a New Zealand ship want to go with Solomon Islands or a different country? Why would anyone register outside of the country where the business is conducted?
You may get lower costs in terms of what the registry is asking you to pay, or you may find that the obligations that that country has accepted which go with that flag are not as onerous as they may be for another country. And so ship self-convenience or flags of convenience are not a new problem, but normally they used to go to countries like Liberia or Panama. But what increasingly you're seeing is a number of other countries opening up and trying to entice registration with their flag. And sometimes the way they would do this is they would mean that there are lesser standards or oversight, and that would be seen as an incentive for some ship owners.
Right, and we're obviously seeing the Pacific Islands try register more ships and more registries opening up in various nations.
But that's it. But yeah. The risk is that the standard gets lower. And so, like, if you've got a vessel that's flagged to New Zealand, you can be assured that the standard will be very high in terms of environmental standards, in terms of conservation agreements, in terms of safety standards, in terms of seafarer standards. And so New Zealand would have signed up to all of these international conventions, which means that as they carry our flag, they carry those commitments. Other countries which sell their flag may not be signed up to the same agreements, and so the standards may be considerably less.
Right, so it's almost like going to a garage that offers an easier warrant of fitness.
Yeah.
And is that what Solomon Islands potentially could offer here if they start their own ship registry?
I don't know whether they're going to increase these standards or not. You'd have to ask them that. But what you'd need to do is do a comparison of which agreements, especially on seafarers and on safety, that the Solomons have adhered to, because that would mean that those commitments then apply to those vessels. And this is where the risk is with often smaller countries, is that they don't have the diplomatic outreach or foreign affairs specializations to ensure that they are high quality international best practice for the vessels. And this is where the risk comes in.
In the Baltic Sea, we saw a Cook Islands flag vessel Eagle S get taken by Finnish authorities after it was suspected of cutting some undersea cables. And it's also suspected to be part of Russia's shadow fleet. Is this a common problem with Pacific flag registries? Are they flagging Russian vessels that are part of a shadow fleet?
the language around here is more political than legal, but the problem of people or boat owners going to flags of convenience is not new. It's just that what we're seeing is that the Pacific is now becoming one of the areas which is engaging in this practice, and they're doing it like many countries, not because they're concerned about trying to have a high quality shipping register or greater control over the vessels. They're doing it because it's a source for money, and it's something that they lawfully can sell. And so even you will find some countries which are landlocked can still have a shipping register, even though it's a complete anomaly. And the risk is that any vessels which are used for untoward purposes could be flagged to those countries, which is why you go back to that thing about having a genuine link where between the flag and the vessel. And the genuine link would mean that there are inspections of the vessel, that there is good oversight of the vessel, that you make sure it wasn't being used for untoward reasons. And I can't speak specifically to what the cooks knew with that vessel, but if they were guided by New Zealand practice, I imagine that the genuine link would have been of a higher standard.
And is the risk here that the Solomon Islands may not see those same genuine links, do you think?
Yeah. And so you're in a bit of a grey area in international law. So we all agree that you have to have a genuine link between the flag and the vessel and its ownership. But we are in a grey with over what that genuine link actually looks like.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā sui fua.